patrolmen, how many supervisors. We have an ordinance that directs the chief how many people we can have. There's a strength ordinance for fire and police, EMS.
And even with the EMS, we've had, and also with the police department, they've been very cooperative because anytime there's a vacancy, Mike does not fill it. Any position just does not fill it. And he usually gives it between 6 months and a year to see if we can operate without filling that full-time position, whatever department it is. And in some cases, you can augment it with the other full-time workers by cross-utilization of the employees, or utilizing part-timers or summer help, or contracting that service out. So I think it's, and Mike can probably give a better assessment of that, but it's hard to say that, okay, this is definitely the most cost-efficient and effective service. It's real easy to identify cost efficiency because it's like, here's how much we spent and compared to this year and last year, but then the question is it compromising our effectiveness? Like with police or fire or EMS or street or sewer. And we got into that a little bit with the park department. We're looking at grass cutting, whether we use summer helpers, which are available 10 weeks out of 33 weeks of the cutting season, or part-timers, which are usually available year-round, or compared to full-timers, or contracting the service out. So we don't really have a set formula like for each department, right? It's just you kind of assess it as you move along. And one other thing to consider too, it also depends on the experience of the department. So, the knowledge and the experience of each department. If you have a lot of we have a lot of newer police officers. They're young. And a lot of our experience is retired. So we're much more careful not to keep vacancies too long in the police department because it takes time to train. And then we want guys to be up to a certain level, with experience. So we don't have that brain drain, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move back to Community Economic Development. Chairman Keeson.
Yes, we need to decide whether we want to move ahead with the economic development agreement with Plain Township, City of Canton, and Jackson Township. If we want to not move ahead with it, or if we want to send them an amended agreement to see if they would be willing to accept that. And at this point, I don't know where we're at. We've received some information, and we just got it today, looking over it, trying to decide what's the best for the city. Am I to understand, Tim, you're going to sort of draft something for us as far as if we do want to amend it?
Correct. Perhaps it's best if I summarize what you received today.
I'd like to go through that. I think people have been waiting for this. I'd like to make a few comments before you do that, because I've gone through this pretty extensively, and I was waiting for this for some time. I finally got here this afternoon. This firm, it says right in here that they've done economic development stuff for decades, so they're very respected. And that's why we chose them, because we need someone from the outside, because sometimes things are too close to you. You need to get some outside views of some things here. And so we said we would take a real good look at what they said. Looking at those pages, most of them are explaining what an economic development stuff is, like a JED, like a CETA, and so on.
And the reason being for that is that our request was to take a look at the economic development agreement as it currently stands, to assess that, and then to provide back to North Canton with the focal point as what's in the best interest of North Canton, and to make a determination whether or not it appeared that this would be good, or maybe not so good, for North Canton to enter into this type of agreement as it stands, as it's written right now, but to also do so, to be able to explain it in very basic ways so that someone that's not familiar with these types of agreements, certainly our residents, you know, they vary from a retired school teacher or a farmer or someone that's perhaps working at minimum wage, newly married. So a great variety in education levels, and asked to just put this into a format that everyone can understand exactly what you're getting at, from the attorneys with the other municipalities, any given resident. So that's, I believe, the beginning of just explaining a little bit about what a JED, what a TIF, what a CETA is. But then it all summed up quite nicely there at the end, I believe.
But before you read that, Joe, I think we need to state, and you know, Artie's here with this camera and everything, so we're going to make sure that we really support collaboration.
Right.
But it has to support the people in our community and our citizens of our community, to not just now, but in the future. As we said this before, there's been some mistakes made over the last 30 years. We look back and say, what did those people do? We don't want to be those people that they're saying that to. So we need to really look at this. So if you would go through the positives and negatives of this, a summary of what they have said, and again, this is an outside firm that is an expert at this stuff. And I would like to see the positives and negatives, maybe the recommendations, and the path forward. I think our citizens, we owe everyone that. Of course, the way we've been in this thing. So if you could read that for the record.
And so everyone understands, this is an opinion letter from an attorney with the law firm of Brickler and Eckler. As Councilman Soretta stated, they've been doing this type of work for decades. And an attorney there, Ms. Christine Schmenk, was the foremost expert and the person recognized to give us an opinion on this within the state of Ohio. She's, you can look her bio up on their website, but basically it states that she's the former director of Ohio Development Services Agency, and she leads Brickler and Eckler's public finance group. She participates in economic development, public sector group. She's also the former mayor of Marysville, where Hondas are manufactured. It's a small suburb north of Columbus. So she actually understands these things with the perspective of a public official or a city. And so we asked her to take a look at the JED that the city was asked to enter into with Plain and Jackson Township and the city of Canton, and just give us her clear opinion, if she could find one, based on that, and the recommendation of what she saw, you know, as an outsider just looking in, and with the focus of the best interest of the city of Canton.
Can I stop you there for a minute?
Sir.
You mentioned recommendations. I mean, this is the opinion letter, but it references twice in here, the terms be changed as provided in an attached marked copy. We don't
Right. No, because she simply provided if you wanted to enter into a JED and you wish that I modify this in some way, this is what I would do. I didn't provide that because time was of the essence, because we didn't have this at the end of the period. So this isn't recommending signing anything. This is just says whether or not it would be in the city's best interest to enter this agreement.
Yeah, but where's
if
the
they
attached
thought
marked
it was,
copy?
it's not provided yet because, again, time was short. But I can summarize that for you, provide for you tomorrow. But it simply pointed to perhaps the focal point that everyone was concerned about was the annexation area. And it's simply the only real alteration to that JED was simply pointing out that the city would not be in its best interest to enter into an economic development agreement where the cornerstone was that the city was prohibited for 50 years from annexing in the subject property within Jackson and Plain Township. The change for that, it was simply stating that instead of that provision, it would state that the city would agree that in the future, regarding the property that was in that exhibit, that if the city wished to annex a property that was located within that area, it would agree that it would contact the municipality, the focus township where that parcel existed, and would contact them in advance and let them know of the interest of the city in annexing the property, and would agree to work with the township fairly and reasonably in developing that parcel. That's the
We can discuss, let's go through the part, let's read this first, then we can discuss, instead of getting, way ahead of ourselves.
Sure.
Well, can I ask this? I mean, it is clear that, to me, as has been true over the last several weeks, that there was not consensus enough to proceed with the document that was passed by the other two townships and by the city. And for whether that's good or bad, that is the reality of the situation. But I would much rather debate a document that we have in front of us rather than conceptual pieces. And I don't mean to shut any discussion down in any way, but
You mean a document that's attached to this?
well, I think if we're going to take what is essentially another offer.
Well, it's not.
Yes.
Essentially, the document that you have before you is the one that you had before you before.
Right.
This attorney was asked to look at that and make an opinion on whether it appeared in the city's best interest to enter that agreement. And if it wasn't, that there could be a proposal that they would provide that was included, that if you want to move forward, perhaps this would be a route that would be in the city's best
Well,
interest.
I think all of us, I mean, from having spoken to each one of you, are interested in trying to find a way to work with the other communities. We all are in consensus about that. But the way that we do that is through another document. And so I think, frankly, we should wait to have this discussion until we have a document in front of us.
So you can't determine, I mean, that's the point of this opinion. It wasn't for this
Let me back up a minute. To my original question, she references twice in this opinion letter an attached marked document. Does it exist or doesn't exist?
Yes, it exists.
Can we
That's
see
what
it?
I said. The point was,
Can we see
for
it?
whatever reason,
Can we see
the city itself, its that email capability was down to about 3 o'clock. I was begging for this document all day long to try to get it out. So as soon as this came out, I scanned that, provided it to the members of this council so they could see.
So we don't have it right now?
No, you don't have it in your package.
Do we have it in the building?
Yes.
Can we see?
Can we
Sure.
Yeah. It references it twice in the opinion
Right.
letter, and I think it would be fairly important. I'd like to have that in
But,
front of us.
okay, that's fine, and I'll get that, but the point is, what the attorney was looking at, what you're asking for is supplementary.
Right.
What the attorney was asked to look at was that, first, was this JED believed to be in the city's best interest? Make that opinion.
No, but
And that's what's
I'm
included
trying to-
here. And then it states, if you wish to have something separate, then I would propose something along these lines.
I would characterize alternate language, though, as material. I mean, if that's in fact legislation. we're
If you
gonna-
wish to enter in something separate.
Correct, correct.
If you don't,
Which I
it's
think-
not material.
Which I think we do.
I think everything's on the table, or everything should be in front of us.
Let's just let this die and not do anything.
Right.
Right. I think we all want
And
to
a
do
lot of
something.
people with their part, their pieces will be
Let's do this, read this, and then give us that information so we can look at
Because
this.
I was afraid I didn't give you enough time to look at the 5-6 pages here, which is kind of dense, but there is a summary.
Well, we got it really late.
If I give you the JED back with the, when you know someone goes through a Word document and they make changes and they're pulled off to the side, I don't imagine that you would get through those, but I'm assure you that the central essence of that is simply that annexation portion, which just states that the city will agree to work with the townships. It just won't agree to jump into a 50-year annexation agreement without any economic development that's tied to that agreement.
So Marcia, can we actually put this on for next week? I mean, presuming that we'll have the document.
And we have to,
look at it.
Plain Township is,
Yeah.
Next Tuesday is the deadline.
All right, read these. Let's move on here, and then we can get to that point. Those are all good things, and I agree with 100%.
Sure,
That we need to have that in front of us.
Yeah, anyone to think I'm hiding anything, I just wanted to get to the point that was the exercise, to look at this, and then if the answer is no, here's an alternative. If you don't get to no, then the issue's moot with the other portion of it. Essentially, as I had mentioned, there's just a summary of what a JED is, and what a CETA is, and what was in the proposed agreement, which everyone is aware of at this time. And there's a summary on page 5 that states as a title, the possible positive and negative effects on the city. It states positive. The city is to be commended for seeking to cooperate with Canton and the townships regarding economic development of the property thereby being one that's in the parcel, or on the map that was drawn. Economic development tools such as JEDs and TIFs have proven to be useful in accelerating development as they provide a means to finance necessary improvements, particularly public infrastructure. When these tools are used in connection with specific development projects in the CETA, is also entered into by affected political subdivisions, orderly development typically occurs, providing long-term positive effects such as increased jobs and tax revenues for the property involved. The negative section. The agreement is incomplete in that it is being proposed in the absence of any specific economic development projects and in the absence of any agreements by the townships to annexation. The city is being asked to give up future rights relating to the above stated tax revenues, the provisions of services and zoning for a 50-year period without the ability to understand what it might gain in return. Because neither a specific development nor annexation is under consideration, the city currently lacks critical information that would allow it to make an informed decision whether the agreement is in the citizens' best interest. The city cannot calculate whether the agreement will have a net positive or negative return in terms of revenue, jobs, and overall economic development. The next section is titled Recommendations Regarding the Agreement. Although I commend the city for its interest in cooperating with the townships in Canton, I recommend against entering into the agreement. Without an accompanying plan for economic development, an agreement that includes the township's consent to annexation or more detailed companion agreements such as a JED, the city is being asked to forego too many future rights and revenue without having effective tools in place to facilitate development. As a standalone document, this agreement is more aptly characterized as an anti-annexation agreement, not an economic development agreement. And then she goes into a paragraph which Councilman Peters had stated. Should the city choose to enter into an agreement, I have attached a copy with my suggested changes. And that's if the city would wish to proceed. That is, she had a copy of the JED and made suggested changes, the ones that I had illustrated a couple moments ago, and that will promptly make them available to everyone. The next, and it's summed up in the final section, stated path forward for the city. She states, in my experience, CETAs do not work well unless they go hand in hand with other agreements that provide for specific development, additional revenues, and enhanced services, such as an agreed annexation, a tax increment financing, a JED, or a development agreement with a known developer. The proposed agreement asks the city to forego future rights and revenues with incomplete knowledge of what it will mean for the city. Therefore, I recommend against entering into the agreement. Instead, I recommend that the city, in partnership with the township and if Canton desires, seek economic development projects for the property in question, then negotiate a JED or similar tool with the townships in Canton. At that time, a CETA that fully incorporates revenue sharing and service provisions could be negotiated and executed. That's it. after the meeting, I imagine those in attendance would like a copy of that as well. We can make copies either after the meeting or in the morning.
Well, since we're here discussing, I was going to get a copy of that thing, bring it out here, so we'll have a copy of the suggested marked up question.
Okay.
I can pass it out here so we can read it.
I agree. I think in good faith, we should look at options to collaborate. I mean, we're not against collaborating. But we are against some of the things that aren't really the best thing for our citizens at this time, like the 50-year. And from what I take on this, and again, I'm no jet expert by far, maybe we need to go parcel by parcel and little bits by pieces where we know what we're getting. From what they said here, what Jed and all that is specific. You know what you're getting, you know what you're sharing, you know we don't have that in this, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Initially, when this was viewed, it was looked at upon as one central document, and then there could be attachments to this, which would be the economic development plans. And it appeared at that time that the ones that may have been, say, viewed upon as happening quickly in the future, those would accompany that agreement. But as time went on, it appeared that they wished to have this agreement signed and executed, entered into by all the municipalities, and then we would negotiate other agreements. But what was left out there is the uncertainty of what happens if we were unable to enter into an agreement. What the city would lose is it lost its right to annexation. If it couldn't enter into and agree to terms and conditions on any economic development agreements that would be paired with that agreement, the city was still out the right to annex, and it was without any of these economic development provisions or agreements.
Gail, would you help him make copies?
She doesn't need to know.
Oh, you're okay. Yep, that's right. You know that. Awesome.
Dave, what do you think while we're waiting over here? I mean, you pretty much faced the whole team on the radio some time ago and did a nice job representing the city, by the way.
But, I didn't get a copy of this until like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and, read through it a couple of times. I read through the agreement. I think that what she's stating is pretty clear. That, and I think that her agreement is well done. I mean, really what our goal is to find ways that we can work in cooperation with our neighbors. And we want to, our goal is to enhance our revenue.
Right.
And we want to maximize that. What's the best way that we can maximize it? When you look at the challenge of these agreements, there's really, I think, the city and the township are inherently at odds. The township's goal is to preserve all of their property tax. And the way that they do that is to prevent cities from annexing their property. Cities, on the other hand, our revenue is not just the property tax, but when we look at future growth, we like to bring in new properties, whether it's vacant property or whether it's businesses that have existing jobs, because not only will they pay property tax, but they'll be paying income tax. So that's where I think we butt heads. Well, that's where I know that we butt heads with the township. So with this agreement, what we hope to do is rather than fighting over properties that the city is going to try to annex in, we come to an agreement that's a win-win for the township and for the municipality. And my concern with the original agreement, which is stated in this report, is that the specific benefits or liabilities to the city are not identified. We're not able to identify that with the proposed agreement. But if we can go back and we can make modifications in a way that that would be beneficial to the city, I would fully support that. So I really have two areas of concern. Number one, that we're entering into a 50-year agreement, which is specific about a few things. Number one, that the city will not be able to annex property, even if we have a water agreement, where a property owner has already signed, and they have a desire, or they've already have a written commitment to come into the city, we could not accept them into the city in the event that we become contiguous to them down the road under this agreement. So we would restrict our ability to bring in new property owners and businesses for the next 50 years. That's one concern. And then the second, as we're giving up that right, what are the specific benefits that the city receives? And that's what we're not sure of. But it looks like that our consultant has proposed changes which may allow us to be a little bit more specific as far as what we would need as a city to enter into this agreement. And then also we can take a look at we know what the restriction is, which is the 50-year annexation. So that's really what my thought is. But if we can get...
Are you comfortable with if we were to pass and basically send back to the others the language as it is in this proposed form, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. Now the thing is, I didn't look at, I haven't seen that.
Have you seen it? Because we haven't. So.
I have not seen
We should talk about that.
Oh, I mean, that's a fair answer.
But no, I'm fully comfortable in making changes to the agreement. I mean, I think that's the best way to go, is to make the changes to the agreement that's going to be beneficial to the city, or that we're comfortable with. Because again, it's not a matter of, we have a proposed agreement where you have John and Marcia both, and Dan, put in a lot of time, and also Tim Fox negotiating this. And since that time, I have met with Lucia Basis and Randy Gonzalez. We met for about 2 hours after the radio program, and we were able to discuss, or at least what my concerns were administratively about the agreement, and then also with this review, I think it's really helpful. And so what I would like to see from council is that we review the agreement, and then whatever changes we have to make in order to move ahead, I would rather do that than to simply say no.
Right.
We're not entering into an agreement. But I can't tell you specifically what those changes are right now because I haven't seen the proposed. I have a few ideas myself, but I don't really want to comment until I see what her.
Well, is it fair to say that we're going to take time next week to hammer out something that we're comfortable with, that we're all
Absolutely.
comfortable with, and then speak in one voice, or at least with some consensus?
Yeah. I think that's what we've been trying to do. And I think this process just really helped us to secure where we are with our feelings.
Yeah.
And if we agree with her red line copied proposal.
Yeah, I would like to see the council and the administration that we pass an agreement with Plain, Jackson, and Canton. And but we would have to make the changes so that we know that our city's interests are best represented in the agreement.
So is it safe to say we probably got to review those things? Are we going to sit here all night and review that? How many pages is that? That's
Maybe more than 2 pages.
oh, it's only 2 pages?
2 or maybe 3. Well, the original agreement, I think, was what, 3 pages or 4?
There's no agreement. It's very long. I have it right in front of me.
Yeah.
It is?
No, but the ones you...
Oh,
She
no, I
marked
don't have
that. I
that
thought
one.
she marked that up.
Yeah, I don't know.
So sure, her red line,
She's red line, couldn't go through.
I'd like to repeat, though, I think he says that you guys did a lot of work in this. We understand that. And you're good enough people to know you're not taking an offense with it. We appreciate you representing us. And we continue, you guys will continue to represent us. We send it back. That's what we need you for.
I think one thing that hasn't been articulated here, it's important to understand, and I've heard it come up twice, is relative to the real property tax. That's taxed at whatever jurisdiction that it's in, be it either Plain or Jackson. The city share, if it was in the city, would only be about 0.9% of the total tax revenue. It is not all that tax. That goes to the schools, the majority, or to the township for levies. However, for them keeping that less than 10%, they're providing all the safety services, all the infrastructure services. That we're not responding with our police, fire, EMS, or street workers.
Right. And I think you guys all know that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's keep, he
No, but
mentioned the taxes.
Right.
I mean,
But we also need to be aware that, you know, this is a part of the area in question is a place that we cannot get to right now because the railroad tracks is.
Yeah.
50 years is a long time.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with the 50 years. Are we, okay. But as it stands right now, without this agreement, we don't go there. So you gotta just remember that as well. So without this agreement, if something becomes contiguous in the next 50 years, which maybe it will, maybe it won't, we could potentially annex it, but also pay back the taxes for 13 years. With this agreement, we may be privy to agreements. I understand this whole we're not sure, because we're not sure, as if the same goes for we're not sure we can annex anything in the next 50 years. I mean, there's a lot of, we have no idea what's going to happen. So we just need to be very careful to agree to terms that are agreeable. I mean, they're not, they're saying to us, as they've said many times, well, we've invited you to this party as friends, and we really don't care or need you here one way or the other than the sanitary sewer down the hotel down here. That we gave them our word that if we provided the sanitary sewer after we fought over it for a little bit, that we would, you know, become part of this agreement. So there's a lot going on that we got to keep reminding ourselves, not just a marked up version of an agreement that an attorney is going to provide to us who hasn't been involved in all these little nuances of the agreement. That's been going on essentially for 15 years.
Well, before we get caught up in the friends thing, remember, we would give them our water at a cheaper rate than what we would make anyway. So we are not getting a whole lot out of this.
Oh,
Someone gets into the jet, we give them our water at the inside rates. Well, we're going to get the water anyways at the outside rates. So just recall that friends is going to cost us.
That's not true.
No?
Because when we enter into this specific agreement, we haven't entered into any agreement. That's what we keep talking about. We haven't entered into anything.
Okay.
So therefore, then we would have to negotiate a JED or a CETA with them, which would mean talking about water rates, sewer rates, who's going to provide what. So there are
And then it would
no
come back to us
conflicts.
to approve.
Right. And in the end, we could all not agree to do a JED, and this agreement could mean absolutely nothing for the next 50 years.
But
And I understand where you're coming
One point of
from.
clarification, though. You're right. We signed the agreement, and we know one thing is for certain.
We're not annexing.
We will not annex for 50 years.
That is the
One
only
thing that we're not
guarantee.
Right now, on this thing.
Well, yeah, on this
Before it
one.
comes back to change.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the other thing under this agreement, we may or may not be able to come to an agreement with a JED.
Right. I agree completely.
So what this report is saying is that typically what happens
You do
is that you
agree
enter into the agreement, the CETA, along with the JED,
Right. And you agree.
where you
not to
have the
apply.
specifics that are outlined. And so I think that's where, and again, I know that John's put in the most amount of time, and Marsha, and also Dan, which you guys have done an excellent job on this. But I think really what we need to do is just clarify, just the specifics.
It's just so hard to hear.
Let me ask you this. If I'm the business, and take me through this so I can understand. If I'm the business, I'm over there next to Kane somewhere, okay, I'm not part of business. Am I automatically forced to go into that jet? Okay, so let me finish it. Why would I want to come in and pay 2%? Why would I want to do that if I'm the business?
Okay, then let me say this.
That's what I want to know, yeah.
Why would you want to come into the city?
Well, if I have a chance, if I have to do one or the other, I'd pay 1.5 rather than 2.
But they've already said that that's negotiable. If we-
But
all that's
what I'm saying is, we don't know if any of those people would ever come into this jet.
We don't know.
And yet we give up 50 years of annexation and our water rates for what?
Not our water rates. That's not a fair statement.
Okay, I'll take that back.
The other thing, one thing about the water rates, remember this. We presently charge 2.5% to two of the users that potentially may come in to this agreement, potentially. one probably never come in, but the new hotel will. The advantage there is those revenues are proprietary funds. We can channel those back to the general fund. That's all ours, 100% ours. Under the present agreement.
It's ours anyway, but the general fund's different than what.
Yeah, because now you can move that to the general fund, because they allow you under a seat or a jet to do that.
Okay.
So there's another advantage. But we'll negotiate our water rate individually.
But to make things clear, if we approve this, that 50 years is already gone.
Yeah, unless you strike the
This
50 years.
specific.
This specific one. So let's make sure that we don't get caught up saying that we agree with this, but we can make changes later. Because you can't make changes to the
No, we're
50
not going to
years.
do it big it now or never.
Okay.
Section 2 has that. Section 2.
So we're all going to take this under advisement, and discuss it again, I mean, is that the plan?
I can't even read it, so I want to talk about it.
You need my glasses.
Mark's looking fair.
So, as I had mentioned earlier, there's the key provision is simply Section 2, and it just states that Article 2, beg your pardon, Article 2B, and I did it in color so it would jump off the page so you can see it. And the big change to that is simply, stating that right, if the city will agree that if it intends to engage in annexation of property in Jackson and Plain Townships, it will provide a written notice to Jackson and Plain Townships and will first negotiate in good faith with said townships for an agreed annexation or some other means of economic development such as a JED. And that's something that you can, I imagine you can live with, because there's no economic deals that are part of this. The city can enter into an agreement that says that we'll work in good faith with you in the future to promote economic development, and indeed the city wishes to do that. But the provision as the JED stands right now states that the city agrees not to annex any property located within the subject property for 50 years, and then that's it. There are no economic deals, development.
15?
50. Yeah.
Oh, still 50?
Still 50.
Right,
Because it
it's
doesn't
still.
matter because they have to go, we have to ask.
Beg your pardon?
Right. So
Right,
50 is okay.
and even, you can have that, but the 50-year agreement is the city will agree to work in good faith with the townships in developing property that may be developed there, and will contact them first and make that attempt to fairly and reasonably work with them to develop that property.
It's common, Chris said this during our committee meeting, it is common and appropriate, and we all agree about this, for the city to say for a parcel of land which we know we're going to get economic revenue, it's a part of an actual JED, an actual CEDA, that as we participate in that particular piece, that we would forego the right to annex that particular piece. But as it's a generic thing, it's a little bit
Yeah.
different.
That makes a lot of sense.
Just like the CEDA on Apple Grove, being Lawton. Sanctuary. We agreed, and that CEDA with Plain Township not to jump across the street for 3 years to try to annex the golf course. And it's been 10. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
now that you see it, I hope you can understand what my point was, that what was in the opinion letter was whether or not that was a good idea. If it wasn't a good idea, then perhaps something alternate. And with trying to get this out as quickly as we could so council members would have an opportunity to review them, that was the part that wasn't initially included, just given the size and nature of it. And if you look at when they have these multiple versions where others put their comments and so forth on the document, it can be confusing. So the issue was simply to get it out where you can see what the quick opinion was from Representative.
Is that the agreement, see, jet, that doesn't mean it's a jet. Original proposed agreement.
Original.
No, it just says economic development. Doesn't call-
Mutual economic.
It doesn't call itself a jet.
Well, because, I mean, technically, yeah, by the terms of the statute, the original agreement that was proposed isn't a jet by the terms of the statute. So it's this is essentially an agreement to agree, which is how she's captured.
Well, they can't enter in a jet without North Canton.
Plus, you got to do public hearings with judge, you got to do.
The proposed land contains municipal land that belongs to the city of North Canton. You cannot include municipal land in a jet that's not been consented by the municipality that owns the land. That's illegal under the jet rules. Our property is in that jet. Yoster property, we own 2 acres. They call it a CEDA, but they couldn't call it a jet. The jet is the Ohio Code states that municipal land, either leased or owned by a municipality that's not a party to the jet, you cannot create a jet on that property, in that jet area. I do know that. So, I mean, that's, it doesn't make any difference because we would agree at that point to go into it. Well, I think for reasons of time and for reasons to do this thing, to spend the amount of time that we need to read it, for next week's meeting, we'll flip the other way. We'll do the council of the whole at the beginning, and we will consider this. We will consider at that particular time the police cruisers. Those will be the 2 items on that portion, at which time we'll then go to a council meeting. And then anything else, which would be that lady's property, I think was the other thing. And that would be the 3 items that would be considered under the regular council meeting, plus any old business to be considered. Is that fine with everybody? So we will spend some time reading it, checking with Tim.
That's a good idea.
That way we're moving forward and we're still keeping everybody in the loop. And it's encouraging the input. And possibly we can hammer out a good agreement.
Dave?
Yes, if I could just add, I do want to thank John and Marcia and Dan for all the time they put into negotiating this agreement, because I had tried it along with John and Marcia back in, what was it, 2006, and we were unable to reach an agreement. So now we're revisiting it, and I know that it's not an easy process to go through, because it's really important to understand how our city is going to be impacted, not only now, but in the future, just as we talked about our budget, projecting our budget in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So I do want to thank you for doing that, and I think that the council's going about this in the right way. We've got the experts that have given their report and recommendations, but I'm confident that we can come up with an agreement that would be a win for Canton, Plain, and Jackson. And I'm sure that Jackson, Plain, and Canton will give us, a couple of weeks to review that and make the changes.
Well, Mayor, it's encouraging that you've agreed to agree with us and look at this and beyond the scope of closing, and I appreciate that. You're willing to participate in what's ultimately best for the city, because that's the intent, what's ultimately best for our residents. And somewhere in the middle, the best negotiation is when everybody is not happy, because then you've all gotten a little something. So, and to council, I appreciate your willingness to discuss this publicly and bring to some resolution. So we will do that next Monday at 7 p.m. Is there anything else to go for the file? Not entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Surratt?
Yes.
Yes.